You are on HOA Control Freaks. The tow hook was inches away. I am standing in my side yard in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on a Tuesday morning in October, and Catherine Parker is pointing a tape measure at my fence like it is a loaded weapon. She is screaming that my fence violates setback rules, that the gate opens the wrong direction and creates a security issue, and that I have exactly 48 hours to remove the entire thing, or the HOA will fine me into the ground. I moved to Magnolia Heights Association 6 months ago for a telecom project coordinator job that keeps me buried in spreadsheets and logs, and I thought a quiet Milwaukee neighborhood would be perfect for supporting my family back home. The HOA seemed normal at first, just another layer of paperwork. Then I installed a fence around my backyard last month, and Catherine Parker declared war. She is the safety committee chair, which means she has decided that every fence, every gate, every property line is her personal jurisdiction. Right now, she is holding a clipboard with color-coded sticky notes labeled by dates, waving it in my face like it is a court order. Her dark brown short bob is whipping around in the wind, and her purple windbreaker is snapping like a sail. She has a pink visor pulled low, and she is clutching a stack of orange stakes like they are official markers. Behind her, a rideshare driver is sitting in his car at the curb waiting for a pickup, and he is rolling his eyes so hard I can see it from here. Catherine jabs the tape measure toward the fence line and shouts, "Your gate swings outward? That is a security risk. The association prohibits outward swinging gates on corner lots." I take a breath and say, "The permit office approved the design. I have the paperwork." She cuts me off and says, "I do not care what the city says. I am the reason this neighborhood stays civilized, and you will follow my rules, or you will leave." That phrase, "I am the reason this neighborhood stays civilized," is her catchphrase. She has said it twice already this week, once on the neighborhood group chat, and once in a voicemail she left on my phone. I am holding a folded contractor invoice packet in a protective sleeve, no readable text visible, and I keep it close because I know she is going to try something. The invoice packet has every receipt, every permit fee, every signed approval from the city. I paid for this fence out of pocket because I needed the security, I needed the privacy, and I needed to protect my tools and equipment. I work remotely half the time, and I have expensive gear in the garage. My family back home depends on the money I send every month, and I cannot afford surprise fees or a tow bill. Catherine does not care about any of that. She sees a fence, she sees a gate that opens outward, and she sees an opportunity to flex. She steps closer, her orange stakes rattling in her hand, and says, "I will bury you in notices until you run out of printer ink." I freeze. That line, "I will bury you in notices until you run out of printer ink," is going to haunt me. She says it with a smile, like she is doing me a favor. I nod slowly and say, "Okay, you do what you need to do." She narrows her eyes and says, "You think I am bluffing? You will see." Then she turns and marches back to her car, her visor bobbing, her clipboard swinging. The rideshare driver gives me a sympathetic shrug as she passes his window. I go inside and sit at my kitchen table, and I pull out the contractor invoice packet. I lay out every document, every receipt, every approval. The fence was installed by a licensed crew. The permits were filed with the city. The setback measurements matched the survey I had done before construction. Everything is clean. But I know Catherine does not care about facts. She cares about control. The neighborhood group chat is already lighting up with posts about fences and property lines, and I can see her fingerprints all over it. Magnolia Heights Association is one of those communities where the online portal is full of fence photos and accusations, and Catherine runs it like her personal courtroom. 2 days later, I get the first certified letter. It arrives in a thick envelope with the HOA return address, and inside is a violation notice printed on official letterhead. No readable text, but the tone is clear. Remove the fence or face escalating fines. The letter says the gate violates safety codes, the setback is incorrect, and the association has the authority to demand immediate compliance. I read it twice, then I checked my records. The setback is correct. The gate meets city code. The letter is based on nothing. I call the HOA management company and ask to speak to someone about the violation. The woman on the phone is polite but distant. She says Catherine Parker filed the complaint and the board voted to issue the notice. I ask if anyone measured the setback or checked the permit, and she pauses. She says, "The board relies on committee reports." I thank her and hang up. Then I get another certified letter the next day, and another the day after that. Catherine is flooding my mailbox with notices, each one slightly different, each one threatening higher fines. One says the fence color is unapproved. Another says the gate hardware is non-compliant. A third says the fence posts are too close to the easement. None of it is true, but the letters keep coming. I am supporting family back home, and I cannot afford surprise fees or a tow bill. Every certified letter costs the HOA postage, but it costs me time and stress. I spend my evenings documenting everything, taking photos of the fence, printing copies of the permits, organizing the contractor invoices. I email the management company again and attach all my proof, and I ask for a meeting with the board. They schedule one for 3 weeks out. 3 weeks. In the meantime, Catherine is ramping up. She posts on the neighborhood group chat that I am a trespasser and a hazard. The post includes a photo of my fence taken from the sidewalk, with a caption claiming I built on HOA common property. The post gets shared, and suddenly neighbors I have never met are commenting, asking why the board is not taking action. I screenshot the post and send it to the management company. They reply with a generic message about community standards. I feel the walls closing in. Then Catherine escalates. She shows up at my house on a Saturday morning with 2 other people, a man and a woman I do not recognize, both wearing yellow safety vests like they are part of some official crew. Catherine is holding her clipboard, and the man has a camera. She knocks on my door, and when I open it, she says, "We are here to document the violation for the board." I step outside and say, "You need to leave my property." She smiles and says, "This is HOA business. We have every right to inspect compliance." I pull out my phone and start recording. The man with the camera raises his phone too, pointing it at me, and Catherine says, "See, he is being aggressive. This is exactly the behavior we warned the board about." I do not move. I keep recording. I say, "You are trespassing. I am asking you to leave." Catherine turns to her backup crew and says, "Note the time. Note his refusal to cooperate." The woman in the yellow vest nods and writes something on a notepad. I feel my chest tighten, but I keep my voice level. I say, "If you do not leave, I will call the police." Catherine laughs and says, "Go ahead, we are documenting a code violation. The police will side with us." I pull up the non-emergency line on my phone, and I make the call. The dispatcher asks if there is a threat, and I say, "There are people on my property refusing to leave. I need an officer." She says someone will be out shortly. Catherine and her crew do not leave. They walk around my fence line, taking photos, pointing at the gate, measuring with a tape measure. The man with the camera films everything, and Catherine narrates like she is hosting a documentary. She says, "Note the outward swing, note the setback encroachment, note the unapproved color." I stand on my porch and record the whole thing. The rideshare driver from earlier is back, parked at the curb, and he is watching the scene with his window down, shaking his head. A police cruiser pulls up 15 minutes later. The officer is young, professional, and clearly tired of HOA disputes. He walks over to Catherine first, and she immediately launches into a speech about property safety and compliance authority. The officer listens, nods, and then asks to see documentation proving she has authority to inspect my property. Catherine holds up her clipboard and says, "I am the safety committee chair. This is my jurisdiction." The officer glances at the clipboard, then at me, and he asks, "Do you want these people to leave?" I say yes. He turns back to Catherine and says, "You need to leave the property. This is a civil matter, not a police matter." Catherine sputters and says, "But the violation. But the safety risk." The officer repeats, "You need to leave now." Catherine and her crew retreat to the sidewalk, and the officer takes my information. He tells me to document everything, to file a complaint with the management company, and to consider a restraining order if the harassment continues. I thank him, and he leaves. Catherine is still on the sidewalk, her clipboard clutched to her chest, glaring at me. She shouts, "This is not over. I will make sure the board fines you into collections." Then she gets into her car and drives away, her backup crew following. I go inside and email everything to the management company, the video, the police report number, the timestamps. I also email my lawyer friend for advice. He replies that evening and says, "You need a survey, you need to prove she is wrong on the record, and you need to force the board to confront the facts." I already have a survey from before the fence was built, but he suggests I get a second one from a certified surveyor with no connection to the HOA or Catherine. I make an appointment for the following week. In the meantime, Catherine keeps calling different tow drivers like she is speed dialing chaos. I find out because one of the tow companies calls me directly and says, "Someone named Catherine Parker is trying to authorize a vehicle removal from your address. We are calling to confirm you requested it." I say, "Absolutely not. I did not request anything." The dispatcher says, "Okay, we will note that and decline the request." I ask how many times she has called, and the dispatcher hesitates. She says, "This is the third company she has tried today." I thank her and hang up, my hands shaking. I check my driveway, and there is a bright yellow warning tag stuck to my windshield. No readable text, but it is clearly unofficial, just a printed paper and a plastic sleeve. I peel it off and add it to my evidence folder. Catherine is trying to make me think my truck is going to be towed, trying to bait me into a reaction. I do not take the bait. I send photos of the tag to my lawyer friend, and he replies, "Keep everything. This is harassment. You can use this." The HOA is threatening collections language, and I need to stop it before it impacts my credit. The management company emails me a week later and says the board has voted to impose a fine schedule, $500 immediately, escalating by $250 every week until compliance is achieved. I reply with every piece of proof I have: the permits, the survey, the contractor invoices, the city approval. I attach payment confirmations proving I was never delinquent despite their fee blast. I send it to every board member email I can find. The management company replies, "Your appeal is noted. The board will review it at the next meeting." The next meeting is still 2 weeks away. The fines are piling up on paper, even though I have not paid a single one. I know they can put a lien on my property if this goes on long enough, and I know that will destroy my ability to refinance or sell. I cannot let that happen. I call a former HOA board member named Tom, a guy I met at a neighborhood barbecue a few months ago. He left the board last year after clashing with Catherine. I explain the situation, and he sighs. He says Catherine does this, she finds someone to target, she floods them with violations, and she uses the board as a rubber stamp. She did it to me when I tried to install a pergola. He offers to testify at the meeting if I need him, and I accept. The certified surveyor comes out the following week. He spends 3 hours measuring, mapping, photographing, and staking the property line. When he finishes, he hands me a preliminary report and says, "Your fence is fully compliant, the setback is correct, the gate is on your property, there is no encroachment." He also notes that the orange stakes Catherine has been placing near the fence line are not on the actual property line. They are off by nearly 2 feet. I feel a surge of relief and vindication. I pay him for the full report, and he says it will be ready in 3 business days with an official stamp. If you are enjoying this HOA chaos, please hit like and subscribe for more wild neighborhood stories. I take the preliminary report and I email it to every homeowner in Magnolia Heights Association right before the meeting. I use the neighborhood portal directory, and I send a mass email with the subject line: "Fence violation dispute, evidence attached." I include the surveyor report, the city permits, the contractor invoices, and the payment confirmations. I write a short note explaining that Catherine Parker has been issuing false violations, that I have been fined for a compliant fence, and that the board needs to correct the record. I hit send at 8 in the morning on the day of the meeting, and by noon the neighborhood group chat is on fire. People are asking why Catherine has the authority to issue violations without verification. Someone posts a screenshot of Catherine's original group chat post, calling me a trespasser, and someone else replies with a link to my evidence email. Another neighbor says Catherine tried to fine them last year for a mailbox color. The tide is shifting, and I can feel it. Catherine posts a reply trying to defend herself, saying she is protecting property values and safety, but her post gets removed by the group admin and replaced with a correction saying all violation disputes must go through the official board process. That evening, I arrive at the HOA meeting 15 minutes early. It is held in the community clubhouse, a small building near the pool. Tom is already there, sitting in the back row, and he gives me a nod. Catherine is at the front table with 2 other board members, and she is shuffling papers, her face tight. The room fills up with neighbors, more than I have ever seen at a meeting. People are whispering, glancing at me, glancing at Catherine. The board president, an older man named Roger, calls the meeting to order and says, "We have several agenda items tonight, including a fence compliance hearing." Roger starts with routine business, approving minutes, discussing pool maintenance. Then he says, "We will now hear the fence violation case." Catherine stands and launches into a presentation. She has printed slides, she has photos of my fence, she has diagrams with arrows and labels, no readable text visible. She says, "The fence violates setback requirements, the gate creates a safety hazard, the installation was unapproved, and the homeowner has refused to cooperate." She holds up her clipboard and says, "I have documented every interaction, every refusal, every delay." She looks directly at me and says, "I am the reason this neighborhood stays civilized, and we cannot allow this kind of disregard for the rules." I stand and walk to the front. I hand Roger a copy of the certified survey report, now complete with the official stamp. I say this survey was conducted by a licensed professional with no connection to the HOA. It shows that my fence is fully compliant with setback requirements. The gate is on my property. There is no encroachment. I also have city permits, contractor invoices, and payment records proving that every step of the installation was legal and approved. I hand copies to each board member, and I see their faces change as they read. Catherine interrupts and says, "The survey is irrelevant. The HOA has its own standards." I turn to her and say, "Your own standards require fences to meet city setback codes, which this fence does." Catherine snaps, "You are twisting the rules." I pull out my phone and say, "I also have video of you trespassing on my property with a crew, refusing to leave when asked, and attempting to authorize tow trucks to remove my vehicle without cause. I have police documentation, I have witness statements, and I have proof that you posted false accusations on the neighborhood group chat." I look at Roger and say, "I am asking the board to rescind all fines, to issue a correction, and to investigate Catherine Parker's conduct as safety committee chair." The room goes silent. Roger looks at the survey, then at Catherine, then back at me. He says, "This survey appears conclusive." Catherine stands and says, "He is manipulating the facts. He is trying to undermine my authority." Tom stands in the back and says, "I was on this board for 4 years, and I watched Catherine issue violations without verification multiple times. She targeted me, she targeted others, and she uses her position to harass homeowners who do not comply immediately. This is a pattern." Several neighbors murmur agreement. Roger clears his throat and says, "We will take a 15-minute recess to review the evidence." The board members step into a side room, and Catherine follows them, her face flushed. I sit down next to Tom and he says, "You nailed it. The survey is the trump card." I nod, but I am still tense. 15 minutes later, the board returns. Roger says, "After reviewing the submitted evidence, the board finds that the fence is compliant with all applicable codes. The violation notices are rescinded, and all fines are voided. Furthermore, the board is placing the safety committee under review, pending an audit of recent enforcement actions." Catherine explodes. She stands and shouts, "This is a disgrace. You are letting him walk all over the rules. I have dedicated years to this community." Roger says, "Catherine, please sit down." She does not sit. She says, "I will bury you in notices until you run out of printer ink. I will make sure everyone knows you are weak." Roger looks at her and says, "Catherine, that is enough." He turns to me and says, "The board apologizes for the inconvenience. You will receive a formal letter confirming the decision." I thank him and leave. Outside, Tom shakes my hand and says, "She just buried herself. Did you hear her repeat that line about burying you in notices?" The whole room heard it. That is evidence of intent. I smile and say, "I know. I recorded it." Tom laughs and says, "Of course you did." The next morning, Catherine's group chat post gets removed and replaced with a correction from the board stating that the fence is compliant and that all violation claims were incorrect. The correction is pinned at the top of the chat, and Catherine is silent. But I know she is not done. She is the type who doubles down. 2 days later, I get a call from my contractor. He says, I just got a call from someone claiming to be HOA enforcement, saying we need to stop work on a project in Magnolia Heights. I told them we are not working there right now, but they insisted we have an active violation. I ask who called, and he says a woman named Catherine Parker. I thank him and hang up. She is trying to intimidate my contractor, trying to poison the well for future projects. I email the management company and report the contact. They reply that Catherine has been asked to step back from enforcement actions pending the board audit. But asking and enforcing are two different things. I know she is still out there, still plotting. A week later, the big confrontation happens. I am at the gas station lot at the edge of the subdivision, filling up my truck, and Catherine pulls in. She parks behind me, blocking my exit, and gets out of her car. She is holding her phone up, recording, and she marches toward me. She says, "You think you won. You think the board is going to protect you, but I am not done." I keep pumping gas and say, "You need to move your car." She ignores me and says, "I am documenting your harassment, your refusal to cooperate, your violations." I finish pumping and I turn to face her. I say, "Catherine, you lost. The survey proved you were wrong. The board rescinded the fines. It is over." She steps closer, her phone pointed at my face, and says, "It is not over until I say it is over. I run this neighborhood." I take a breath and I say, "No, you do not." I pull out my phone and I show her the certified mail trail, the proof that the HOA management company received my compliance documents weeks ago and still issued fines. I say, "I have proof that you received every piece of evidence, every permit, every survey, and you fined me anyway. I also have proof that you contacted my contractor to intimidate him, and I have witness statements from neighbors about your harassment. I took the fine notice without flinching, because I knew what it would trigger. It triggered an audit, it triggered a board review, and it is going to trigger consequences for you." Catherine stares at me, her mouth open. She says, "You are lying." I say I am not, and I already sent this to the management company and to a friend who owns a towing service. He told me you tried to get him to tow my truck without authorization. He cut ties with you immediately. Catherine goes pale. She lowers her phone and says, "That is not, I was just trying to." She trails off. I say, "Move your car, Catherine." She hesitates, then she gets back in her car and reverses out of the way. I get in my truck and drive off, watching her in the rearview mirror as she sits in her car, motionless. The following week, the management company emails me. They say the board has completed its audit of the safety committee and Catherine Parker has been removed from her position. They are implementing new policies requiring third-party verification for all code enforcement actions. They also say the board has voted to reimburse me for the survey cost and the attorney consultation fee, and they are issuing a formal apology. The email includes a no-contact directive prohibiting Catherine from initiating any further enforcement actions or contact with me. Violations of the directive will result in penalties for the HOA. I forward the email to Tom, and he replies, "That is a solid win. She is done." I sit back and exhale. It is over. The fence stands, the fines are gone, and Catherine has been sidelined. But the best moment comes a few days later. I am working in my yard, trimming hedges near the fence line, and a city inspector pulls up. He introduces himself and says he is here for a routine property line verification requested by the HOA. I show him the survey, and he walks the fence line with a tape measure. After 10 minutes, he says, "Everything is correct, the fence is compliant, no issues." I thank him, and he leaves. As he is pulling away, Catherine drives past, slowing down to watch. She sees the inspector, sees me standing by the fence, and her face twists. She speeds up and disappears around the corner. That evening, the neighborhood group chat lights up with a post from the board. It says a city inspector has confirmed that all recent fence installations in the subdivision are compliant, and that the HOA cannot enforce setback rules that contradict city codes. The post also reminds residents that safety committee actions require board approval and third-party verification. Catherine does not respond. Her silence is deafening. The next board meeting is packed again. Catherine does not attend. Roger announces that the board is implementing a new policy requiring all violation notices to include third-party documentation and an appeal process. He also announces that the HOA is reimbursing my filing fees to settle the dispute and avoid further litigation. Several neighbors clap. Tom gives me a thumbs up from the back row. I leave the meeting feeling lighter than I have in weeks. The fence stands, the fines are gone, and Catherine has lost her power base. A few days later, I get a check in the mail from the HOA for the survey fee, the attorney consultation, and the filing fees. I deposit it, and I send some extra money home to my family. Catherine tries one more move. She posts a long rant on a different neighborhood forum, one not moderated by the HOA, claiming that I manipulated the board, that the survey was fraudulent, and that the inspector was bribed. The post stays up for about 6 hours before the forum admin removes it and bans her for making unfounded accusations. Someone screenshots the post before it is deleted, and it circulates on the main group chat as an example of what not to do. Catherine's credibility is shredded. Tom calls me a few days later and says, "Did you hear? Catherine tried to run for the board again in the next election cycle, but she withdrew her name after 3 people filed complaints about her harassment. She is done." I thank him, and I hang up, smiling. The neighborhood starts to feel normal again. People stop staring at my fence. The group chat returns to boring topics like trash pickup schedules and pool hours. I keep my evidence folder just in case, but I do not need it. The fence stands, the gate swings outward just like the city code allows, and no one says a word. One afternoon, I am sitting on my back deck, and I see the rideshare driver from that first confrontation parked at the curb again. He sees me, waves, and shouts, "Hey, I heard you won that fight. Good for you, man." I wave back and say, "Thanks." He drives off, and I sit back and look at the fence. It is just a fence, wood and posts and a gate. But it represents something bigger. It represents standing up to bullies who hide behind clipboards and rules they do not understand. It represents knowing your rights, documenting everything, and refusing to be intimidated. Catherine stays quiet for months. I see her occasionally, driving past or walking her dog on the far side of the subdivision. She does not make eye contact. Her clipboard is gone. Her orange stakes are gone. She is just another neighbor now, stripped of the authority she abused. The board implements more reforms. They hire a third-party compliance company to handle all code enforcement, removing the power from volunteer committees. They rewrite the rules to require surveys and inspections before any violation is issued. They create an appeal process with timelines and transparency. Tom tells me the board is terrified of lawsuits now, and they are bending over backward to avoid another Catherine Parker situation. I run into one of my neighbors at the grocery store, a guy named Marcus who lives 3 doors down. He says, "Hey, I just want to say thank you. Catherine tried to fine me 2 years ago for a patio cover, and I did not have the resources to fight it, so I paid." Seeing you stand up to her, seeing the board actually hold her accountable, it gives me hope. I tell him I am glad it worked out, and he shakes my hand. The HOA's annual meeting rolls around a few months later, and I decide to attend. The board presents a report on enforcement reforms, highlighting the new third-party verification policy. They also present a financial summary showing a decrease in legal fees after settling my dispute. Roger acknowledges me by name and thanks me for bringing the compliance issues to light. A few people clap. Catherine is not there. After the meeting, Tom pulls me aside and says, "You know what the funniest thing is? The board had to pay your filing fees, pay for the third-party audits, pay for new policy consultations, and all of it cost them more than if they had just checked the survey in the first place. Catherine's crusade cost the HOA thousands." I laugh and say, "That is poetic justice." Tom nods and says, "And the best part is, she did it to herself. If she had just verified the facts, none of this would have happened. But she was so sure she was right, so sure she could bully you into compliance, that she never stopped to check." I think about that on the drive home. Catherine's downfall was not just her cruelty or her overreach. It was her certainty. She was so convinced that she was the gatekeeper, the enforcer, the reason the neighborhood stayed civilized, that she never considered she might be wrong. And when the facts proved her wrong, She doubled down instead of backing off. That is what destroyed her. The fence still stands. The gate still swings outward. The survey stakes are long gone, but the string line and the orange markers left faint impressions in the grass for weeks. A reminder of the battlefield this side yard became. I replaced the stakes with landscaping, small shrubs and mulch, turning the conflict zone into something pleasant. Catherine never apologizes. I do not expect her to. People like her do not apologize. They move on, they find new targets, or they fade into the background. In her case, she fades. I hear through the neighborhood grapevine that she is focusing on her job now, staying out of HOA business entirely. Someone says she is moving out of state next year. I do not know if that is true, but I would not be surprised. I keep the contractor invoice packet in a file cabinet, along with the survey, the police report, the emails, and the settlement letter. I do not look at them often, but they are there. They are proof that standing up works, that documentation works, that knowing your rights and using them works. They are also proof that bullies lose when you refuse to be intimidated. The neighborhood moves on. New families move in. Old families move out. The HOA continues to exist, but it is quieter now, less aggressive. The board learned a lesson, and they are careful not to repeat Catherine's mistakes. I get a thank you card from a neighbor who says the new enforcement policies saved her from a bogus fine for a mailbox color. She writes, "You changed the culture here. Thank you." I put the card on my fridge. One evening, I am grilling in my backyard, and I hear a knock on the gate. I open it, and it is Tom. He is holding a six-pack and he says, "I figured we should celebrate properly. You turned this place around." We sit on the deck, and we talk about the last few months. He tells me stories about other HOA battles he has seen, other neighborhoods, other Catherines. He says, the problem is not the rules, it is the people who enforce them without checking the facts. You proved that facts matter, and that is rare. I thank him, and we toast to property lines and surveys and standing your ground. The wind picks up, rattling the loose fence panels in the distance, the same sound that was there the day Catherine first confronted me. But now it is just background noise, not a threat. The fence is solid. The gate swings outward, meeting code, meeting city approval, meeting every standard that actually matters. Catherine's orange stakes are gone. Her clipboard is gone. Her authority is gone. I finish my drink, and Tom leaves. I stand by the fence and I look out at the neighborhood. It is quiet. It is peaceful. It is exactly what I wanted when I moved here. And the fence that started this whole mess, is just a fence again. Nothing more, nothing less. The final twist comes a month later. I get an email from the management company with a subject line, Board Audit Results. I open it, and it is a summary of the safety committee audit Catherine triggered with her harassment. The audit found that Catherine had issued over 40 violation notices in the past 2 years, and more than half were either unsupported or retracted after appeal. The board is issuing refunds to affected homeowners, and they are implementing mandatory training for all committee chairs. The email ends with a note, "Thank you for bringing these issues to our attention. Your documentation was instrumental in this review." I forward the email to Tom, and he replies, "She got caught running a fake police state, and you are the one who exposed it." I smile and close the laptop. It is done. Truly done. A few weeks later, I see Catherine one last time. I am walking my dog early in the morning, and she is getting into her car. She sees me, freezes, and then quickly gets in and drives off. No words, no glare, just retreat. It is the most satisfying non-interaction I have ever had. The HOA holds a special meeting to vote on the new enforcement policies. Every policy passes unanimously. The board announces that the safety committee is being restructured with oversight and accountability measures. Catherine's name is not mentioned, but everyone knows why the changes are happening. The room is full of neighbors who have been fined, harassed, or intimidated over the years, and they are all nodding, relieved. I leave the meeting and I drive home, and I park in my driveway and I look at the fence that Catherine said was a violation. The fence that she tried to force me to remove. The fence that triggered an audit, a board overhaul, and a neighborhood reckoning. It is still standing, exactly as I built it, exactly as the city approved it, exactly as the certified survey confirmed. The fence stands. I stand. Catherine is gone. The HOA learned a lesson. The neighborhood is better for it. And I can finally focus on the things that matter: my work, my family, my life. The drama is over. The war is won. And all it took was documentation, patience, and a certified survey that proved she was lying all along. Thanks for watching, and thanks for all the support.